So now we are going to look at the final and the fourth elasticity that you need to know about. And this last elasticity is known as the cross elasticity of demand, or more simply and more commonly CED. Now, since we are again talking about elasticity of demand, therefore we are again going to look at the responsiveness or the amount of change in demand when something changes. But this cross elasticity of demand, it's unique and it's different to the earlier three elasticities that we have been looking at: the PED, the PES, and the IED. And the difference is that in all these first three elasticities, we always focused on talking about an individual product's elasticity at a time. So there was just one product involved at a time. What I mean is that if you have to think of or measure the price elasticity of demand of, let's say, apples, then you would look at the changes in the demand of apples and compare them with the changes in the price of these same apples. So there is just one product involved. And similarly, if you have to think of or measure the price elasticity of supply of cars, then again you would look at the changes in the supply and changes in the price of these same cars. So only one product at a time. And this is where this last elasticity, the cross elasticity of demand, it's different. Because cross elasticity of demand, remember, it's always measured, it's always calculated as being between two different products. So we always say out the whole complete thing and write down the whole complete thing, the cross elasticity of demand between A and B. And it is very important for you to understand that when we write it like A and B being any two products, what we mean is that through cross elasticity of demand, we are trying to measure the responsiveness or amount of change in the demand of this first product A. So it's always the demand of A. And we want to measure the response of this demand due to the changes in the price of the second product. So that is how you are supposed to think of and read of the meaning of whenever you see the CED between this and this in your MCQ exams. It's the demand of the first product, it's the price of the second product. And let me just explain what really do we mean here. So all I'm saying is that if you have a product A and you are looking at the demand of that product A, and then in a different market you have a different product B, and let's say the price of product B falls. Now if you are interested in trying to measure that by how much does the demand of A change or respond due to changes in the price of this other good, could be that you are looking across to a different market, to the price of different product, and you want to study the response then of the demand of product A. That is where you would think of the cross elasticity of demand of A with respect to B. Whereas if you have to measure the cross elasticity of demand between B and A, that would mean you are trying to measure the response or change in the product B's demand due to the change in the price of product A. So that is the first thing, and that is very important. You need to make sure that as soon as you see cross elasticity of demand between, let's say, shoes and footballs, you should be able to work out very quickly that which is the product whose demand you will be focusing upon and which is the product whose price you will be focusing upon. So with that in mind, let me move on to the formula that you can use to formally calculate the CED between two different products. So if you're trying to calculate it between product A and B, then you will divide the percentage change in the demand or the quantity demanded. You can use any terminology of product A, the first product. So let me write it like this. You will divide that by the percentage change in the price of product B, the second product over here. Now, of course, the sign and the value of the CED will hold important economic meaning. And what they tell us is basically the way in which these two products, product A and B, the way in which they are related to each other. Now, if you're wondering what do I mean by the way in which two products are related with each other, you just need to go back and remind yourselves about what we learned about the substitute and complementary goods. So substitute goods, remember we said, are two goods that are similar to each other, that can be used one in place of the other. And remember I said that always think about substitutes through this classic example of Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So substitutes like Coke and Pepsi, they are related with each other in the sense that if you are looking at the demand of Coke and then you observe that the price of Pepsi falls, then if Pepsi becomes cheaper, then Pepsi and Coke, they're substitutes, they're similar goods. So at least some of the consumers of Coca-Cola will decide to switch over to Pepsi and stop consuming Coke. Why? Because Pepsi is similar good and it is now cheaper. So price of Pepsi falls, the demand of Coke will fall. This is the relationship that we studied between substitute goods. And then on the other hand, we learned that complements are two goods that are related in the sense that they are useful only if they are used together. So here I told you to always think about these complementary goods through the classic example of printers and ink. Now printers are only useful when you have ink. Just having a printer alone is useless. And similarly for ink. You need to have a printer, otherwise ink is useless. So that is what the complementary goods are that must be used together. Now if you are looking at the demand of, let's say, printers, and then let's assume the price of ink increases, ink becomes more expensive. Now this is where we are saying that, look, if you are looking at the demand of printers, now suddenly some consumers of printers will decide not to buy. Why? The price of printers has not changed, but since ink is more expensive, it becomes more expensive to use and run that printer, and therefore some consumers will decide that, okay, we are not going to buy a printer. So the demand of printers will fall. And that is the sort of relationship we studied between complementary goods. The price of one good increases, the demand for the other complementary good falls. Now what we basically need to know through the sign of CED is that how we can look at the sign and tell whether two goods are substitutes or complements. And through the value of CED, we are going to learn how we can tell whether the two goods, if they are substitutes, then how closely related substitutes they are. Are they very similar or they are just related to a certain extent? And similarly, through the value of CED, we will learn how we can tell whether the two complementary goods, how closely related complementary goods they are. Can they just be absolutely used just together, or it's just better to use them together and they can be used maybe without each other as well. So the strength of relationship will be expressed by the value of CED, and the sign will tell us about whether they are substitutes or complements. So if you want to calculate the cross elasticity of demand between substitutes such as Coca-Cola and Pepsi, then if you apply the formula, what you will do is, since it's CED of Coke due to the changing price of Pepsi, you will divide the percentage change in the demand of Coke with the percentage change in the price of Pepsi. And since they are substitutes, when the price of Pepsi falls, as we have just discussed here, that is, there is a negative percentage change in the price of Pepsi, the price falls, then as a result the demand of Coca-Cola will also fall. So the percentage change in demand will also be negative, it's decreasing. So you will end up dividing a negative by a negative, and therefore your answer will come out to be a positive. You are dividing two negative terms, therefore the negative will cancel out with each other, the answer will be positive. And that is what you need to remember, that a positive CED, it tells you that the two goods that you are calculating or measuring the CED for are substitutes. If one good becomes cheaper, the demand for the other substitute will fall. People will move towards this cheaper good. And on the other hand, if you try to measure using this formula the CED for complementary goods, so let's do that here. So CED between printers and ink. Then again, if you apply this formula, this time you will have to divide the percentage change in the demand of printers with the percentage change in the price of ink. Now, as we have just discussed here, if the price of ink increases, then people will buy fewer printers. The demand for printers would fall. So you will end up dividing a negative over a positive. So your answer will be negative. And that is therefore what you need to remember. When the sign of CED is negative, it tells you that the two goods must be complements to each other. And then as far as the value is concerned, let me just try to keep it very simple. All you need to remember is that the larger the absolute value, so greater than 1 and larger it is, 20, 30, 40. So greater than 1 is simply important, but this time we are saying the larger the value of CED, it means the more closely related substitutes or the more closely related complements you are looking at. And to quickly understand why that is the case, you see, if you get a value of this division which is greater than 1 and a very big number, that means you must be dividing a very large number, a very large percentage change in demand with a smaller percentage change in price, which basically is telling you that look, if the price of Pepsi changes, the percentage response of Coke's demand will be massive. So there must be very similar, very closely related substitutes. A lot of consumers will move from Pepsi to Coke because they are so similar, they are so closely related goods. And you can think of printers and ink in the same way. If the absolute value of the CED is very large, it tells you that look, when the price of ink changes, the percentage change response of demand of print is huge. So larger the value, the more closely related substitutes and complements you are looking at, and smaller the value, the more weaker substitutes, and we say the more weaker complements we are looking at. As far as weaker substitutes are concerned, all we mean is that look, they are still similar goods, they can be used one in place of the other, but they are not very closely related. So think of Pepsi and let's say milkshake. You can use one in place of the other, but they are not as close a substitute as Pepsi and Coca-Cola. So in summary, remember the significance of the sign and how you can use the sign to identify these two different types of goods. That's the most common thing that you will see in your A-level exam, in your essay questions. And then make sure that you are comfortable that when you see CEDAB, you realize that it's the demand of A that will be divided with the price of B. You need to be very clear about that because you will get MCQs where you will have quite a lot of numbers, a couple of goods and a lot of things going on in the MCQ. But basically you just work out which is the good whose demand I will be focusing upon, which is the good whose price I will be focusing upon. And then just make these simple calculations. Find your percentage changes and divide the right ones with each other and you will get to the answer. I just want to talk very briefly about the possible uses of this concept of cross elasticity of demand by businesses. And I just want to keep it very brief because of a reason. And the thing is that there are a lot of uses, a lot of ways in which business can make use of the knowledge of CED. But I just want you to focus more on the possible uses of price elasticity and income elasticity of demand. They are more important. So I don't want to leave you with a bunch of uses for CED because then things will become more and more confusing. You will start mixing things up. And as far as uses of CED are concerned, they are less important because you might end up seeing a question on this, but it would be much more rare. If you are unlucky, you will be stuck with the question where you have to explain the uses of CED by businesses. But in that case, if you are stuck, the simple way of getting around this is that just think about a tobacco shop. Now, a tobacco shop is just supposed to, principally, it's supposed to sell cigarettes. But if you go to any modern tobacco shop, you will see that they are also selling soft drinks, they are also selling ashtrays, they are also selling things like all the paraphernalia, all the things, mints come to mind. Candies, mints, chocolates. They're trying to sell all the things that consumers of tobacco, consumers of cigarettes may also end up using with these cigarettes. Which basically is a simpler way of saying that this tobacco shop is trying to sell complementary goods, goods which are complements to tobacco. And of course, it's a good business strategy. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that. So we convert all of this simple explanation, making use of this fact that we know that the sign of CED tells that two goods are complements. So we in our essay questions will express the use of the CED by businesses by saying that, look, businesses should identify goods that have a negative CED between them, because that would tell them that these goods are complements, they can be used together with each other, and that would most probably help these businesses to increase their overall sales. And then give this example of a tobacco shop, and you will have enough ammunition to survive this question on the uses of CED by businesses. As I said, your focus should be always on the uses of IED and PED, but just in case, this might come in handy.